So the athletes are just about ready. Their engines revving behind the start line. 45 athletes with 20 laps to do of this 1 kilometer circuit. 40 turns to be negotiated. The Olympic champion from Tokyo is an absentee here, Mara, which is a
right,
shame.
Massimo Stano of Italy, but he will be towing the line in the 35 kilometer race walk next Sunday.
We're expecting a winning time, I guess, somewhere around, what, 1:17, 1:18 for this 20 kilometers. And that would mean each kilometer will be walked in around 350 to 355, let's say 355 per kilometer.
So many of these athletes wearing hats now.
Let's have a look at some of these athletes now. There's Nick Christie, the reigning US champion at 20 kilometers. Christie has 2:84 on his back. Not that we will see that much. There is Pers Karlström of Sweden, world number 8 on the time, the bronze medalist from Doha 2019 in those sweltering conditions of Doha. There is Toshikazu Yamanishi, the Tokyo bronze medalist, the Olympic bronze medalist from last year from Sapporo. Took the was first in the race walking team championships back in March. Ikeda, watch him, Koki Ikeda, the Olympic silver medalist from last year. What a Japanese pairing that is. And Alvaro Martin, the reigning European champion, 4th in the Olympic Games last year, 2nd in Muscat over 35 kilometers, the Spaniard, back in March. He's very strong indeed. This is a formidable field. So, right in front of us here on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, the race gets underway. 45 starters in this men's 20 kilometers race. And they have about 150 meters to walk before they have to negotiate the first turn down at the eastern end of the strip, this 500-meter long strip. The dominance of the Chinese over the first 2 or 3 laps in the women's race, what, almost 2 hours ago now, was quite pronounced, Mara, but I don't know if that's going to be the case here in this men's contest.
Yeah, I mean, race walking is very much a global sport with all areas represented, and we saw that in the top 8 of the women's race. And here also Japan, Oceania, very strong in race walking, especially Australia, Europe. And Kenny, the young Irish athlete, only 23 years old, right up at the front there as this race gets under. A little bit of shade there, as you can see, but very hot. I think it's about 28 degrees Celsius as we speak. So many of the athletes wearing white hats to try and do as much as they possibly can to keep themselves cool. There are 2 drink stations on the course, one for their special drinks, which they can put anything they wanted to, and then one general station, which is drinks provided by the race. And of course the athletes doing all sorts of things, ice cubes in their hats, the ice collars we saw the Japanese team wearing, and anything you can possibly do. It isn't that humid, thankfully, but the sun really beating down.
Yamanishi, the defending champion, straight to the fore with that red number. He's one of the shortest men in the field. I'm not sure what he's gesturing about there. Who's he gesturing to? Is it people on the sidelines?
I think his team officials on the sideline there, possibly.
Well, his personal best is 1:17.15, and if you look at the best performances in the world this year, that would be the quickest by about 30 seconds, although Yamanishi did that 3 years ago in March 2019 in Nomi in Japan, which is to the northwest of Tokyo.
Yes, that's right, on the Sea of Japan coast. Yeah.
Is it windy, the Japanese coast, Mara? Do you get winds there? Or is
it depends. I mean, varies, but there, Yamanishi already.
Wow.
This is typical of Yamanishi. He goes straight to the front, piles on the pressure from the gun, so negotiates those turns. The turns have been widened, but to help the athletes get round them. But turns are one of the areas where the judges will be keeping a very close eye. And let's just remind you of the rules as we look at that turn. So there's one rule in race walking with 2 parts, and it's as follows. Race walking is a progression of steps so taken that the walker makes contact with the ground so that no visible to the human eye loss of contact occurs. The advancing leg must be straightened, i.e. not bent at the knee, from the moment of first contact with the ground until the vertical upright position. So one rule, two parts, loss of contact and bent knee, and we will bring you any red cards that appear. The judges can use yellow paddles. They're just a warning. It doesn't lead to disqualification. They're essentially telling the athlete, I'm not satisfied with your technique, you need to improve. And then there are also red cards. And any one judge can only give out one red card to any athlete. And the athletes don't know which judge has given them a red card, but the red cards will appear on the disqualification board, so they need to keep a close eye on that. An athlete who gets 3 red cards will go into the penalty zone for 2 minutes. If they get a 4th red card, they will be disqualified.
Toshikazu Yamanishi here, the defending champion, making no secret of his intention, is he? My word, 1 lap gone in under 4 minutes. That split, I reckon, was about 3:57, something like that. And this will really stretch this field out very quickly indeed. In fact, big gaps appearing with 3:59, I think, is the official time. No, that's 3:59 for the chasing pack. He was 3:55.
3:55,
Yamanishi,
yeah.
wow. Just take a look at what that would bring him home in overall, 3:55. It would give him a 1:18.20. And the championship record is 1:17.21. So it would bring him home in about a minute outside the championship record of Perez, which, as I said earlier, back in 2003 in Paris, was a world record at the time.
So Yamanishi, very aggressive racing from the off. He's obviously very confident. Won the World Race Walking Team Championships 20K in phenomenal form.
Do you think, Mara, that they could have been given a race start time that was slightly more sympathetic than 3 in the afternoon in high summer?
The 35Ks start at 6:15 a.m. as do the marathons, but of course this race is a bit shorter. Still an hour and 20 odd minutes of racing in this conditions. It's tough out there.
Did you ever race in a marathon or a championship marathon, any marathon that started at 2 or 3 in the afternoon on a summer's day? I mean, it's,
no.
It seems almost sadistic to me. It's bizarre.
They've got a lot to pack into the 10 days of competition.
Well, they have indeed. This, of course, is the second medal medal event of the championships. 10 days of great action coming ahead at these 18th World Athletics Championships from Eugene, Oregon. There's the distance between the leader, the defending champion, Toshikazu Yamanishi, the bronze medalist from the Olympic Games last year. And the pack, 4 seconds over the first kilometre.
So very, very fast pace to start off with. Tim Berrett, 5-time Olympian and I think 9-time world champion representative, telling us that this pace is a bit suicidal for many of these athletes. Maybe not for Yamanishi up front, but for many of them it will be way too fast, and we might see some dramatic changes in the finishing order.
Mara, you lived in Japan for many years. I mean, you know Japan as well as anybody who is sort of non-Japanese born, and Japan, in my experience, I've been there a few times, is sweltering hot and humid through the summer months. So would you say that the Japanese athletes, when they saw the race time announced for this championship, would have gone, yes, that's great?
Probably.
The rest, half the field would have gone, oh no. Yeah,
and bear in mind that humidity makes a massive difference, and this is dry heat here. You know, the Japanese athletes, they're used to humid summers, so this might be relatively easy for them. So Yamanishi, just 26 years old, very fast PB. The world record held by Suzuki, his compatriot, of 1:16.36, so his personal best, less than a minute off the world record. Very dedicated in his training.
And Yamanishi at 26 is really at the peak of his powers, isn't he? He's you know, got plenty of years of hard training behind him. Studies at the Kyoto University, studies physics. I don't know how relevant that is to extreme endurance performance, but he likes his reading. I bet he does after a few hours out walking. What do you want to do? Just sit down and, if not fall asleep, then certainly just read a good book. But he was the first Japanese racehawk to win gold in the World Championship 20 kilometers when he won 3 years back, almost 3 years back in Doha. And the way he's walking at the moment, you'd think he's very confident of retaining that title. If you've joined us in the last few minutes, welcome on board to these 18th World Athletics Championships coming from Eugene, Oregon in the Pacific Northwest of the USA. It's a sweltering hot mid-July afternoon, and this second medal event of the championships, the men's 20K, 20 laps of this 1 kilometer loop, comes after the women's race in which Peru took a unique, brilliant gold thanks to the figure of Kimberly Garcia-Leon in a truly dominant performance in their 20 kilometers walk. This is a big pack. This is a very different race that's unfolding here as Pintado now hits the front.
Yeah, 23 athletes in that lead group, Tim.
Well, Brian Daniel Pintado of Ecuador. It is the Pan Am Games champion who was 5th in La Coruña back in late May, some 6 weeks or so ago. He's a dad. His son will be watching this, I'm sure. He's football mad himself, is Brian Pintado. And he certainly starts here as one of the favourites. The wind picking up around us, by the way, as we speak. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that in the trees in the background, but certainly there were some very strong gusts here by the finish line. Pintado happy to do his share at the front.
And Tim, we've got bad news for Jose Barondo of Guatemala. He's now on 3 red cards. His third was for loss of contact, so he'll be into the penalty zone the next time he passes. And also Quentin Roux of New Zealand, 1 bent knee, red card. And also Alexi Oyala of Finland, 1 red card for loss of contact.
Well, it is going to start happening, isn't it? Because the pace, while not quite as aggressive as in the women's race, relatively speaking, is certainly quick enough. They go through 6 kilometers in 24:18, so that was another 4:07, the same as the previous kilometer. Maybe that's why Pintado has taken the lead. He felt he didn't want any further deceleration. Look how much water he's poured over his legs, the little figure of the Ecuadorian. What a powerful race walker he is, though. He'll be comfortable, familiar, I suspect, in these conditions. And there must be in the back of their minds, Mara, you know, when you come from a really hot, humid climate, it must be in the back of your mind that the conditions are to your liking. It's an advantage. It's almost like an altitude-trained athlete racing at altitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing about tough weather conditions is it's a leveler, and athletes who may not be the fastest can be right up there.
Well, the 10-kilometer point, the halfway point is coming up. They went through 9K in 36:30. They're very close to the halfway point here. 40 minutes on the clock in this men's 20-kilometer race walk. Nobody yet has really thrown the gauntlet down. This last 6 or 7 kilometers, maybe more, has been very steady. Pretty fast, but nothing that has really torn the pack apart. It's about 22 strong. They go through 10 kilometers there, 40:34 unofficially. And the split 20:22 for that 5 kilometers. They went through the first 5K in 2011, so they've dropped 11 seconds there. But 40:33, in fact, the official split for this pack as they go through halfway. And now we get towards the business end of this race, and no great surprise perhaps, Mara Yamauchi, the defending champion from Japan, who looked almost impatient and keen to get going from the gun. Toshikazu Yamanishi has hit the front again at that halfway point. He leads into the second half.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if after his early lead he deliberately slowed down just to take it a little bit easy in that group, and now he's going again, but Karlström going with him.
Well, Karlström really impressed me in Oman back in March. He was a very dogged, determined competitor, eventually walking to that brilliant gold medal in the 35K. But they're lapping athletes now, and there is a break up in the pack. There's no doubt about it. It was 22, 23 strong a few minutes ago, and it has been for the last half hour and more. Now, all of a sudden, there's a sort of sense of urgency in this pack, isn't there? Look at the turnover rate, the cadence from Takahashi. Yamanishi has definitely picked up. There's no doubt about that. And I think that pack is breaking up. It's great to get a side-on view and just see what sort of damage is being done by this acceleration. I want to say imperceptible acceleration, but I think it's fairly clear.
Absolutely, and interesting to see him doing this at 10K. I mean, this is the kind of break you would see a bit later in the race, but Yamanishi really applying the pressure now, and his teammate Jushaw going with him, as is Karlström, the tall Swede. Karlström, of course, so confident of his victory in Muscat, he grabbed a Viking hat on the last lap, and that is Alvaro Martin, the Spaniard.
I reckon, Mara, there's only about 12 athletes there. There's the splits so far. 2011 for the first kilometres, 2022 for the second kilometres. I'll tell you what, I'd put $100 on this third 5 kilometre segment being significantly faster. Of course, I know betting's not allowed and I wouldn't dream of it, but as a figure of speech, I would put money on this third 5 kilometres being by far the quickest. Certainly, they have broken down this group from 22 athletes. It was all looking rather comfortable, rather cosy through that second 5 kilometre segment. And now it's down to about 10 or 12. And look at the cadence. The turnover rate of Yamanishi here is quite astonishing.
Yeah, very smooth technique. None of the top 14 athletes have red cards at the moment. And Yamanishi now surging away from the chasing pack. He looks very smooth.
Doesn't he? Beautiful technique. I mean, it's fluid technique. I think that's one way of describing it. The knees and the legs just roll through without any jarring. It's almost poetry in motion. Gathimba is in that pack now. He's going well. The Kenyan hanging in there on the back of that pack of about 10 or 12. Karlström leading it and trying desperately to keep within reach of Yamanishi, who is attacking it. There's no doubt about it. The current pace is 4:03 per kilometre. The last 3 kilometres have been 4:03, 4:04, 4:03. Suzuki's world record, 3:49 per kilometre, so 14 seconds. I mean, that is incredible. That is a fast running pace.
Yeah, amazing speed, isn't it? Yeah. So there have been multiple gold medalists at these World Championships before in the men's 20K. The legends of race walking, Jefferson Perez of Ecuador. He's a 3-time winner in 03, 05 and 07. And also Maurizio da Milano, the Italian, in 87 and 91. So Yamanishi, can he become the third multiple gold medalist? And there is Rodriguez just struggling to stay on the back of that group. Martin and Karlström, the 2 tall figures, the Spaniard and the Swede. So the field now getting very strung out.
Well, the water is applied over the shoulders and the cap of the defending champion, Toshikazu Yamanishi, the reigning champion as he is, and he's making a very bold bid here to ensure that he retains and remains gold medalist at the World Championships. 11 kilometres then has been reached, just waiting for that time to come through, 44:24, and I'll tell you what, that is the quickest split of the race so far. That is what, a 3:51 kilometre from Yamanishi. He has absolutely blitzed the last lap here. The first kilometre was the quickest of the race. We thought it was almost suicidal at 3:55. That is a 3:51, and yet, Mara, there's a whole load of bodies, probably about 10 or 12 bodies who have stayed with him, and several of those are going to be feeling the face. This could be their undoing.
They certainly are, and I think we're going to start to see red cards coming thick and fast now, as some of these athletes who can't quite... And Yamanishi again being caught.
Well, it's strange, isn't it? He puts in these surges, almost like he's testing the opposition. Do you remember? I remember back in 1978, there was a Kenyan distance runner, Henry Rona, who set several world records. And he used to turn 10,000 metre races into fartleks. He'd run... I remember the Commonwealth Games in 78 in Edmonton, Canada. He used to stride the straights and jog the bends, stride the straights and jog the bends. It was very frustrating for those around him, but he was toying with the opposition. I don't know if that's the case here with Yamanishi, but it has been mighty impressive.
I mean, you do see this in marathon running. You know, they continually throw in surges. So Correa is into the penalty zone, the Brazilian. And he is on 3 red cards, 2 for loss of contact and 1 for bent knee. So he joins Barondo, who we saw earlier, in the penalty zone. Campos, the Peruvian, still on 2, as is Choe of Korea. And lots of athletes on 1 red card. But at the sharp end, the top 15 or so athletes through 11K on 0 red cards. So it really shows that those athletes with a very efficient, smooth, flawless technique are up at the front end of this men's 20K race walk.
So about 8 kilometers to go then. The cat was thrown in amongst the pigeons at 10K by the reigning champion Toshikazu Yamanishi with a 3:51 11th kilometer. It was almost as though a gun had gone off when he hit the halfway point, and he accelerated to the fastest time of the race so far. So as they approach 12 kilometers, the pack is together once again, but the pace has increased dramatically. We're reaching the business end of this men's 20-kilometer World Championship final now. And it looks like Karlstrom has moved up alongside Yamanishi. It's almost like he was gathering himself, the big Swede. He towers over these men around him. And Gathimba's not a small fella, but Karlstrom looks like a giant leading this trio. Is he going to take a breather here? It's not that he's tall, he's also powerfully built. He's got massive legs, big shoulders, real V-shaped torso. Clearly a man in supreme shape, but working hard here. And again, you can just hear that little groaning. And I'm sure that is Karlstrom who's working hard here. The others will be aware of that, but they're all in their own little sea of pain and effort at this stage as they go into the last 5 kilometers. Mara, did you have any kind of a mantra you would tell yourself? Let's say you got to 20, 21 miles or 35 kilometers in a marathon. What was it you would tell yourself when you were going through a really agonizing path?
So I would set myself a small goal, like get to the next drink station, get to the next mile marker, get to the next lamppost. And that would help me to concentrate and just prevent any, you're into damage limitation mode at this stage of the race. So Perseus Karlstrom not having any of it with the Japanese and Gathimba. But he's also entered in the 35K, the tall Swede.
The trouble is that you say damage limitation, but actually, as they go through 16K and 63.53, that means that's been a 2:56 that kilometer. Damage limitation, actually the damage is going to get increased over this next 4 kilometers because there can be no let-up. Yellow disc being held out there, I think, to Ikeda at the back of the group.
Yeah, I think it was him. And Declan Tingay at the back of that group now on 2 red cards.
Tingay a little way back now. He was in this group, but it's the last 5 minutes or so between them. Yamanishi and Karlstrom have reduced it to 4, and there are only 3 medals, and 3, as they say, or 4 doesn't go into 3. Gathimba to the left of picture. Strange style. He's got his feet look like they're walking down a thin white line. If you look at the way he walks, Gathimba to the left of picture there, his feet are on exactly the same line, but it works for him.
So the best performance by Sweden in this event in the history of the World Championships was Karlstrom's bronze medal in Doha 3 years ago. Kenya have never been on the medal rostrum in this senior World Championships.
Look at the contrast between Karlstrom's arm action and Ikeda to the right of picture. Left of picture and right of picture. Karlstrom, massive bloke, swinging backwards and forwards those arms so powerfully. Ikeda to the right, almost not using the arms. Tiny, gentle movement of the arms, isn't it? Really delicate walker. Very quick turnover too. Hasn't got a long stride. Karlstrom, the tall Swede in yellow, massive, long, raking stride. Ikeda, almost a pitter-patter little stride pattern.
Yeah, real difference in technique, isn't it? And difference in body type. Gathimba's shoulders really rocking side to side. We just caught a glimpse of Pintado of Ecuador just trying to get back onto that leading group. Currently in 5th place for the Ecuadorian. Some 2 seconds or so. Actually, it's more like 5 seconds, I think. It was 2 seconds through 16K, but I think he's coming a bit more adrift, and that is Jusho, the Japanese. He's in 6th place. Alvaro Martin, the Spaniard, in 7th.
Well, I would love to see Gathimba get in amongst the medals. It would open up a whole new world of possibilities for Kenyan youngsters as Yamanishi now hits the front again. Karlstrom has done his share. Maybe Yamanishi felt that there was a vulnerability beginning to show from Karlstrom, who wasn't really testing the trio behind him. And now Yamanishi hits the front once more. And will there be a further acceleration? 17 kilometers coming up. They've the last few kilometers, they've been 3:56, 3:54, 3:52, and then a 3:56. What's this 17th kilometer going to come out at as the finish draws nearer and nearer? Gathimba to the right of picture with those hunched shoulders pumping around. I'm sure there are lots of coaches, Mara, who'd love to get hold of Gathimba and try and smooth out that technique, because wasted energy like that is wasted effort, and cumulatively over half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, that becomes very significant.
There's absolutely no doubt there's so much talent in endurance sport in Kenya. And Karlstrom, as they pass our commentary booth, just a little bit detached from that lead trio.
So they have gone through 17K. There it is, 67.46, 1 hour, 7 minutes and 46 seconds. So that's a 3:53, that split. The previous kilometer was a 3:56. And Yamanishi perhaps responsible for a couple of those seconds being clicked off the previous split as he continues to walk very aggressively. And now a gap back to Karlstrom. Yamanishi and Ikeda and Gathimba, 1, 2, 3. Japan in first and second. And for the first time, Percy Karlstrom beginning to look vulnerable. Another warning card disc held out there to Yamanishi, the defending champion. But Karlstrom back in fourth place. Looks like he's in a bit of trouble in the yellow.
Yeah, he was 2 seconds back through 17K, but I think that gap has grown ever so slightly. And meanwhile, Pintado, the Ecuadorian, is just behind him. So now Gathimba also struggling to stay with the two Japanese. So the two Japanese look like they've got a 1-2 wrapped up. Meanwhile, Karlstrom is dropping back. The gap to Gathimba is getting larger. So,
well, that is great news for Kenyan fans.
It certainly is.
Samuel Kireri Gathimba. What a historic walk this would be if he could take a medal, the 34-year-old. He had a win in his last race, the national record holder. That was in Saint-Pierre in Mauritius in the African Championships. And Karlstrom there, catching Gathimba. Karlstrom rallying, just as he did in Oman, as the leaders now go through 19 kilometers. 1 lap to go for this Japanese pairing of Yamanishi and Ikeda. 1:15.27 for them. And that's a 3:51. It has got so aggressively quick these last 3 kilometers. 3:53, 3:50, 3:51 as they head into the final circuit. 2 more corners to be negotiated, 2 more turns to be negotiated. The gap back to Gathimba, as you can see, just 9 seconds. Karlstrom 1 second down on him, Mara. It couldn't be tighter.
And meanwhile, Pintado in 5th is only 5 seconds behind Karlstrom.
Well, this is where the judges have to be absolutely on their toes. Yamanishi has kicked in hard and negotiated the final turn and upped his game dramatically. This is like kicking off the final turn of a middle distance race. Boy, Toshikazu Yamanishi, the defending champion, has eased away from his compatriot, and the gap is about 20 meters, probably 3 or 4 seconds now, as Yamanishi, who through much of the middle section of the race, if you weren't with us, was toying with the field. There was a pack of about 20 for about 6 or 8 kilometers in the middle of the race, and he kept accelerating for 3 or 4 minutes, accelerating away, forcing the pack to go with him, and then easing back, and they'd all ease back and get a breather, and thank goodness. And then he'd accelerate again just when they thought they were getting a breather. And that's very, very tough to deal with mentally and physically. Well, clearly he has been toying with the opposition, the vast majority of them, maybe even his teammate, through the second half of this race, because this, Mara, is a decisive acceleration. Surely he won't be caught now.
We must remember Yamanishi is on 1 card, so if he gets 2 cards on this last lap, he could be into the penalty zone. Of course, the chief judge can disqualify anybody outright in the last 100 meters. So Yamanishi will be hoping for no red cards as he's stormed away from his teammate Ikeda.
Well, are we seeing the champion of 2019 in the sweltering heat and humidity of Doha, about to retain his title. He's got about 150 meters to go towards the finish gantry. Ikeda, his teammate, behind him. Japan in 1 and 2. Here's the battle for bronze. The yellow vest of Per Karlström of Sweden negotiates the final turn. And Gathimba of Kenya, who was in 3rd place, I thought looked comfortable a few minutes ago for 3rd, has been caught. Now, can he get back to Karlström? The battle for bronze continues as we come back to the leader. Toshikazu Yamanishi, gold back in 2019. 3 years later, he's waited a long time for this, but has he got it perfectly right? 1:26.34 was his time in Doha in sweltering heat. Well, this will be infinitely quicker, many minutes quicker. 1:18 on the clock at the moment. This is daylight. This is not the dark. This is Eugene, Oregon. It's not the heat of Arabia, of Doha. And Toshikazu Yamanishi, who has looked truly dominant throughout the race, storms to gold for Japan, punches the air with just a few meters to go. Ikeda, his teammate, continues to look strong back in 2nd place. Koki Ikeda, who was 2nd in the Olympic Games last year, but the champion today is Toshikazu Yamanishi. He retains his gold from 3 years ago. He is world champion over 20 kilometers. It is 1-2 once again for Japan as Koki Ikeda takes the silver, and Karlström takes that bronze. He breaks the will of Gathimba of Kenya, who finishes a fighting 4th eventually in this World Championship 20K. 1:19.25 for Gathimba, losing by 7 seconds that precious bronze medal, which now goes to Sweden.
The previous best performance by a Kenyan in this race was 26th place, Tim. So Gathimba, he's missed the podium, but he's done a historic performance for Kenya. So Japan 1-2 and Sweden in 3rd.
Percy Karlström finishes with energy to spare. It's amazing what a bit of adrenaline can do, isn't it? There are the 3 medalists. Toshikazu Yamanishi retains his title for Japan from his teammate Koki Ikeda. So 1-2 for Japan. And Percy Karlström of Sweden, world number 8 on time, takes 3rd place here, the bronze medal for him. The same position he filled back in 2019 in Doha.